This is a WMUR Commitment 2018 special in partnership with St. Anselm College and the New Hampshire Union Leader, the Granite State Debates.
New Hampshire's 2nd Congressional District has been Democratic territory for 3 terms now. Republicans are hoping to bring it back to the GOP, which previously held it for years. But before they can face the incumbent, these candidates need to win the primary. Brian Belanger owned an excavation and septic service business. Gerard Boulogne owns a business that engineers roofing systems and is an author. Lynn Blankenbecker is a Navy nurse who served in Afghanistan, an attorney, and was a state legislator. Robert Burns owns and operates a pharmaceutical quality control company and was the Hillsborough County Treasurer. Stuart Levinson is an emergency medicine physician and rheumatologist. Steve Negron is a retired Air Force officer, worked at Lockheed Martin, and is a state rep. It's a diverse group for voters to choose from as Republicans look to reclaim the 2nd CD seat.
Tonight, the Republican candidates for the 2nd Congressional District.
Good evening and welcome to the final night in our Granite State Debate series ahead of Tuesday's primary elections. We are live at the New Hampshire Institute of Politics on the campus of St. Anselm College. I'm WMUR Political Director Adam Sexton. We are joined tonight by the Republican candidates seeking the seat in the 2nd Congressional District of New Hampshire, all looking to take on incumbent Congresswoman Annie Kuster. Let's get a look at that 2nd district if we can. The 2nd CD encompasses the entire western half of New Hampshire. It stretches along the southern border, including Salem and Nashua, and then wraps up and around to include Concord before reaching to the northernmost points of the state in Pittsburgh. Let's run through the format for tonight. Our questions will be coming from myself and our panelists, distinguished journalists all. Candidates will be allowed answers of 60 seconds or less, and rebuttals of 30 seconds or less will be allowed by the moderator. Let's introduce our panelists for the night. They are WMUR political reporter John DeStaso, Casey McDermott of NHPR, and Dave Solomon of the New Hampshire Union Leader. Let's get right to our questions, and the first one comes from Casey McDermott. It is on the topic of tariffs and trade.
According to the Commerce Department, New Hampshire exports were worth more than $5 billion in 2017, with almost 30% going to Canada, Mexico, and China. The exports from our state supported more than 19,000 jobs in the U.S. in 2016. Mr. Negron, what specific policies would you support in Congress to make sure that trade and tariffs do not hurt New Hampshire's economy and specifically the North Country?
Well, Casey, thank you very much for the question. I think it's important to understand that we're trying to make sure that we keep what advantage we have, but level the playing field as we go forward. And I think that's what the current administration is trying to do. You know, when you start from a position of inferiority, and I think that's what President Trump inherited, we have to look at what's in the best interest of this country. And me, as the 2nd congressional representative in Congress, need to make sure that I take that forward a step further, and to make sure that the guys and the gals in the countries and the companies in the 2nd Congressional are being leveled on a playing field.
Thank you, Mr. Negron. Same question to Mr. Burns.
So, you know, it's interesting. So Canada is actually our largest trade partner here in New Hampshire. And one of the things that the Canadians have done is they have a massive tariff on dairy products. And as you know, we have a $1 billion company here making specialized organic dairy products, right close to here in Londonderry. And so, what Donald Trump is doing, I think is correct. We need fair and free trade, but we don't have fair trade right now. And then you take a look at something like Mexico, where we've worked out a really terrible deal with Mexico, where we actually subsidize their mail coming into our country. So when you buy something on eBay, if you've ever wondered why you only pay a few cents for shipping, it's because it's heavily subsidized by our government, and we need to make it more fair. And I don't even know why the United States government has negotiated such terrible deals, but that's why I support what Donald Trump's doing about bringing fair trade back.
Mr. Belanger.
Well, again, everything's got to be on the even playing field. We've just been forgotten about in Washington, and our government has forgotten about the people. The Granite State, if we import something from another country and we're having a hard time and that country doesn't want to get on the same playing field and they want to hold back, then we need to start manufacturing that in our country. We need to get some of these young college students energized to get out there and start companies, start small businesses, and get some of this, get our country to be by ourselves again. We need to be able to manufacture steel, aluminum. We need to make sure that our weapons are built here in the United States. Everything, we need to get back to being a strong nation again and not be beholden to any foreign country.
Ms. Blankenbecker.
Thank you. So President Trump has always put America first, and I think that this is just another prime example of how President Trump has put America first. We can no longer subsidize other nations. We can't buy the world a Coke. And so, I really feel like that this is President Trump's way of leveling the playing field. Of course, my concern is about New Hampshire and representing New Hampshire's interests in Congress. But I don't see where these tariffs are going to hurt New Hampshire. I think they're going to help New Hampshire by leveling that playing field. And so I think this would be good for New Hampshire and for all of America.
Mr. Levinson.
Yes, NAFTA actually created a lot of these inequalities, and they just got worse over the years. So with NAFTA, part of it wasn't even trade. It was to create social progress in Mexico, as well as to a lesser extent establish pathways in Canada. When President Trump saw this, he couldn't believe that this was going on, and he actually said that very early after he took office. And that's the way we have to go forward. We need a level playing field, and of course, we are at a huge advantage because the industries in Canada and Mexico are dependent upon selling their products in the U.S. And while Mexico has already agreed to change some of those practices, Canada will next because they're afraid that the auto industry will be on the table as well, and that's the majority of their export economy. So we have a huge advantage that we could play upon, and the president is finally doing this. It's nice to have somebody that will actually hold people accountable.
Mr. Boulogne.
I'm going to give a little economic lesson here. Back in the 1800s, corporate tax rates were 1%, and our economy dominated the world. It wasn't even close. And slowly but slowly, the corporate tax rate went up and up and up, and we became less and less competitive on the world market. Corporations don't pay taxes. If a manufacturer manufactures a widget that costs him $10 to make, he sells it to the hardware man for $15. The hardware man sells it to all of you for $20. Well, if you put a corporate tax of $5 per widget, it doesn't cost the manufacturer $10 to make it anymore. It costs him $15. He sells it to the hardware man for $20, and he sells it to you for $25. You pay the tax. In a competitive world, in this entire planet, we need to have a competitive corporate tax rate. And I'd bring it down to 1%, and this economy would take off faster than it's taken off now.
Thank you, Mr. Boulogne. Our next question comes from John DeStaso. It's on the topic of guns.
Thank you, Adam. Good evening. Earlier this year, after the mass shooting in Parkland, Florida, at the high school there, the NRA's chief executive, Wayne LaPierre, said, quoting now, "Every day, young children are being dropped off at schools that are wide open, soft targets for people bent on mass murder. It should not be easier for a madman to shoot up a school than a bank or a jewelry store or some Hollywood gala." This prompts a few questions. And so, Mr. Burns, first, do you agree with Wayne LaPierre? And would you sponsor or support the use of federal funds to help local school districts purchase guns or hire armed guards?
I agree with him that it is unfortunate that our most precious resource, our children, we take the least amount to protect as we do money or a bank or a jewelry store or something like that. Would I use federal funds to help people buy guns? No, but I think that if teachers want to arm themselves in the workplace, 100% I support that. Anybody should be allowed to arm themselves in the workplace. Even a truck driver driving over state lines should have national reciprocity. They can carry that gun with him. So, but I wouldn't use federal funds, but I think that the private corporations and companies would step up as far as helping to provide teachers with training and firearms. I would imagine that the NRA would step up. Gun companies like Sig Sauer, I think, would be happy to say that, hey, we protected schools and that we gave these as donations. So I don't think that the federal government has to provide money for these guns.
Ms. Blankenbecker.
Thank you. And, I feel badly that children don't feel safe at school. Children should go to school and feel safe, and certainly that should be a priority. But this is a mental health issue. It's really not a gun issue. But to answer your question, I don't think that the federal government should pay for guns in schools. I do believe, though, just like Mr. Burns, that our Our teachers should be allowed to be armed. You know, we need rapid response in the schools. When a shooter comes in, we don't have time to wait. And so those teachers that are comfortable with firearms, that own their own firearms, should be allowed to bring those firearms, especially when they've been trained to use those. You know, I can't imagine what it must be like to be a teacher and have to be a human shield of protection between a shooter and my students and have no way to protect myself or them. You know, certainly I think we should allow them to have mace as well, whatever it will take, so that teachers can be can protect themselves and their children. And I do believe we need to arm our resource officers as well.
Mr. Levinson.
Yes. The problem is we need school resource officers in strategic locations. We need the building hardened. I don't believe buying guns with federal education money is the answer. But the problem is these schools have had resource officers and they haven't been the highly trained officers that are necessary. They're often retired from other police departments when in fact they should be the most highly trained because they're the ones functioning without backup. I mean, Ann Custer has been anti-gun. She's received poor ratings from all firearms organizations. Well, let's start where we agree. We all want to protect our children, and with the proper training, some minor redesigns in schools, our children should be able to go to school safe, feel safe, and parents not have to worry once they drop their kids off at school.
Mr. Negron.
Thank you, Adam. You know, it's more than schools. It's about being able to protect yourself. You know, I'm a father of 3. And even though our children are a little bit older, you know, it's not just about schools, and we shouldn't be myopic when we talk about this stuff. You know, when you start saber rattling about being able to take stuff away from individuals that have a right to have that, I'm going to stand up in front of it. And look, we all know this. You get federal dollars, there's a string attached to those federal dollars. Nothing's ever for free. You know, we used to be told that when somebody gets something for nothing, somebody gets nothing for something. And so to use federal money to arm those teachers, I disagree with that. If they're qualified, capable, and they want to do that, I think that's their prerogative. But we have to look at the bigger picture, and is that individual that has the right to bear and carry a weapon, that still should be happening and not be infringed upon.
Mr. Belanger.
You know, our family values have kind of gone downhill. That's the core thing. We need to start getting some message to the parents, because a 16-year-old kid just don't go on the street corner and buy a gun. I'm sure if he's very resourceful and he lives in the inner city, he probably could manage that. But we're talking some of these places, these kids are getting guns from their parents' closets, from their parents' dressers, drawers. You know, it takes a parent or it takes a gun owner to lock up their weapon and be you know, sensible. And our schools have resource officers now. A lot of them, at least I know when I grew up and my kids went to school. So those police officers have carried guns when they're on duty. Why not allow them to carry the guns in the school? I believe that. But using federal money for that, no. Less government. We don't need the government having their hands in something else.
Mr. Boulogne.
I grew up in Colebrook, New Hampshire, on the Canadian border. When I was going to high school, we brought our guns to school. I remember trying out my friend's gun in the parking lot. I wasn't shooting it, but I was aiming it around, and everybody saw it. That was not a problem. And I don't think it's gun violence so much as the culture. If you see the video games they're playing today, my nephews were playing with some video games, and they were, you know, I wouldn't have let my children play with those video games. They were shooting up people, and then it deadens the sensitivity. They actually use these video games to train soldiers on how to shoot. And I think that it's more cultural. And yes, the teachers should be allowed to carry firearms. In Parkland, the resource officer ran like a squirrel. And I think the teachers with a firearm would back everything up. You know, it would be the second gauntlet to prevent the school shooter from achieving success.
Thank you, Mr. Boulogne. A follow-up question from Mr. DeStaso.
As a follow-up, Mr. Boulogne, we'll start with you. More broadly, are there any federal restrictions that you would add to gun ownership, such as banning bump stocks? Or on the other hand, are there any federal restrictions that Congress you feel should do away with?
The silencer. The silencer is, it serves a purpose of being a quieter firearm user. I was in New Boston. I had a big backyard, and I would fire off my firearm there at target practice, and neighbors complained, you know, we don't like the gunshots. A suppressor. And I don't know why they were ever made illegal. There's legislation now considering making the suppressor legal, and I'm all for that. Other than that, I think it's pretty good the way we got it now. Thank you.
Ms. Blankenbecker.
So no, there aren't any federal regulations that I would take away from. I certainly would, though. I would support a national reciprocity law. I think that would be a good law to have, and so I would definitely support that. You know, here in our own state, when you're in down south, you're in Massachusetts or in Salem, you could effectively break the law just by stepping over the parking lot in the mall. And so I think we do need a national reciprocity law.
Mr.
Can you read
Levinson,
that from my campaign website?
would you like to respond?
Yes. I don't think new laws would be helpful. The problem is the overreach. If you outlaw, say, bump stocks, I'm sure the legislation would include other things that would be more far-reaching. Reciprocity is something that is high time we passed in this country, but the main issue is our laws need to be enforced in a fair manner, and we have to fix a broken system where the national background check system just doesn't work. The Air Force didn't give it to the FBI in one shooting. There was another case where the person put warnings on Facebook. I mean, we're just not paying attention. It isn't that the laws aren't there. It's just they're not being followed, and we're not using common sense with those laws.
Mr. Negron.
Thank you, Adam. You know, as the only legislator up here that helped pass constitutional carry in the House this session, I think the national reciprocity law is something that we need to look at. But, you know, it's a very slippery slope when we start figuring out what is and isn't out of the Second Amendment. And I think everybody wants to talk about that. And I will tell you, I will stand in front of the Bill of Rights. That's what I believe. And I think that when you start chipping away at the mortar between those Bills of Rights, not just the second, it's the first and the fourth and the fifth, then I think we're on a slippery slope. So, you know, we've got good laws on the books right now. We need to protect those laws. And, you know, as I tell people, if you want to build medieval siege weaponry in your backyard, then you should be able to do that. Nobody should come in and tell you what you can and can't do.
Mr. Belanger.
Well, you know, sanctuary cities don't just end on immigration. I mean, if you have a liberal police department, a liberal judges, and you have where, you know, they're looking the other way on certain criminals that are happening in their town, there are other things they're looking past. They're not abiding by the laws. Taking rights away from gun owners is not. I'm a gun owner. I've owned guns my whole life. And, you know, taking gun rights away from people, bump stocks. If you own a bump stock, there's a reason why you own it, because you like to go out and shoot. And if it's the fact that you're shooting 100 rounds in 3 seconds, hey, if you're that person, enjoy yourself. You know, other people enjoy guns in different ways. People hunt. You know, I mean, it's just, we have to abide by our laws, and we have to look after the people, because it's we the people that count. And that's who we have to look out for.
Mr. Burns.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the only candidate up here who's gotten multiple A's from the NRA or the New Hampshire Firearms Coalition. And there's a lot of laws that I would rescind, and there's one that I would support, national reciprocity. For example, silencers were brought up. I think that there's far too many regulations on those. And also I think that it's very unfair and discriminatory towards people that the Howard Amendment, where we can't purchase fully automatic weapons made after 1984, even with all the proper FLLs and permitting and tax stamps that go along with it. You know, it's unfair, and it's driven up the cost of these weapons to such a high extreme amount. Only the uber rich can afford it. And I'll tell you, a lot of these weapons, they're in New Hampshire. We're one of the second highest rates of machine gun ownership, and Bedford, New Hampshire, I know, is where a lot of those machine guns preside. And I think that it's unfortunate that only the uber wealthy in a place like New Hampshire can be able to own these weapons.
Our next question comes from Dave Solomon. It's on the topic of immigration.
Thank you, Adam. Good evening, candidates. On the topic of immigration, let's put aside illegal immigration for a moment and focus on legal immigration, which President Trump has proposed cutting by 50% over the next 10 years. So, Mr. Belanger, do you believe that legal immigration is changing America in a bad way and should be curtailed?
Well, yeah. Because you may have half the family members that come in here legally, but it's the other half that may be the criminal half that'll come in here illegally. Because once someone gets established here, they can send money back to their home country to help those folks come into our country. And when they get here, they gravitate around these sanctuary cities, and where they know they'll be protected, because the left's is not we're not going after the police officers and the sheriffs and the court judges that are allowing these criminals to do bad things. But yes, I do believe that some part of illegal immigration is affecting us.
Mr. Boulogne.
My sister owns an apartment building in Canaan, Vermont, and I was managing it for her while her daughter was having medical issues. And there was a tenant there named Sanjay, was his first name. He's from India. And we got to chatting, and he wasn't hiding anything. He was here legally. He was on a visa, a work visa. So we started figuring out, asking him questions, as I was just curious. And they put him up. They feed him. It was like 6 months. He was doing some IT work for, I forget the company. And I asked him, how much he was making an hour. And he was, it says $2 an hour. And what it is the contractors hire them out, and they pay the contractor in the amount of minimum wage, but they pay them only $2 an hour. But they feed them, clothe them, and for $2 an hour, and all you did was work and sleep. And he sends the $2 an hour home to India, where $2 an hour is worth like $30 an hour.
Thank you, Mr. Boulogne. Ms. Blankenbecker.
Thank you. First of all, I think the lottery system was terrible, and I think that the president has, even though that was a legal way to come into this country, that was really a terrible way to come in, to bring in folks that we weren't sure who was going to win the lottery and come in. So I think that was a good first start with our president in decreasing the amount of legal immigrants. There's many, many ways to come in this country. There's over 100 ways to come in through different types of visas. People can come in on work visas. People can come in on school visas. But we need to make sure that we have enough resources for all those people that are coming in as well. So, I think that we need to look at our process. If our immigration system is broken, we need to look at that to make sure that we're getting the right people in here. But, I think our president's doing a good job. He's forward thinking, and I think that he's certainly looked into this and putting in those new processes, like getting rid of the lottery system, is a first good step.
Mr. Levinson.
Yes. When I first started looking into this a year ago, I saw that our whole immigration policy was a national fiasco. Now I feel it's been a national tragedy. We can't even agree as a country on what to do with the violent criminals that have become a scourge of our inner city. That recently we had that case of Molly Tibbetts, who was murdered by a violent criminal immigrant, and yet we have sanctuary cities, sanctuary states. This has to end. I myself am particularly upset with in-state tuition for illegals. It took me 7 years to go through college. I was a factory worker. I was a waiter all the time, trying to take a college course here and there, and it was tough. We have to start taking care of our own citizens before we decide what's going to be next. There are areas that people can come here as guest workers. Our own agricultural industry can't get enough workers. They have to advertise at huge cost to show they can't fill jobs, and yet this whole system is just not working.
Mr. Burns.
So my mother emigrated here legally. So, I understand this. And quite frankly, it is unfortunate sometimes when people are trying to come here legally and it is a marriage type situation and they have trouble getting here because of all the problems that the illegal immigration has caused. So let me talk about illegal immigration for just 1 second. One of the things about illegal immigration that we don't talk about that is happening is vacation births, where people from mostly Russia and China are coming here and having anchor babies. And what we really do need to do is crack down on those parents who are doing stuff like that. But as far as illegal immigration, yeah, absolutely. We need more legal immigration, but it needs to be merit-based. Now, I've spent a lot of time abroad and down in places like Mexico, where Canada advertises for Mexicans to move to Canada, and it's merit-based. If you don't work out there, if you're not a good worker, if you don't hit certain points, and Switzerland does this as well, then you get sent home. But that way you keep the best and the brightest, the people that you actually need for your workforce. And when we have extremely low unemployment, as we do right now, we need those workers.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Mr. Negron.
Thank you, Adam. I haven't just started looking into this over the last year. I've lived this. My grandfather is a legal immigrant from Mexico, came here in 1921. So there is a process by which we need to come to this country. We're a land of laws. We need to follow with those laws, and if we're not, we need to get back to it. You know, I think what you look at the Pew Research Company institution, and they said in 2015 there were about 11, at a conservative estimate, 11 illegal immigrants in this country. So when I hear my president say, you know, we may have to slow down the flow of illegal immigrants, he's just trying to balance the scales. So we have to figure out where those 11 million are. Where are they? What are they doing here? Do they get sent back to where they came from? And then we can actually start the process of bringing people into this country legally. You know, the president has done some great things. He stopped chain migration. He's about to stop chain migration and the lottery. Look, there's a process, folks, and we need to get back to it.
Next question comes from Casey McDermott. It's on the VA.
Dr. Levinson, your status as a VA whistleblower has been at the center of your campaign, and at the same time, some of the problems that have been reported at the VA are reported to have started well before those issues came to light publicly. I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit about why you didn't come forward publicly earlier.
Well, as long as I was able to do my job with integrity, I worked within the system. That's how we were all trained. That's what we tried to do. But when the VA changed how they would deal with problems from addressing them to covering them up, that's where I got off. That's when I met with Ann Custer, and I will say, if Ann Custer had done her job, I wouldn't be running here tonight. I met with her. The first words out of her mouth was the VA wasn't in her congressional district. Never mind all those veterans from her district that do use the VA. Never mind, she's the ranking Democrat on the VA Oversight Committee. The next, after she became bored with us, bringing our complaints to her, she next said, I have to go now. I'm going to a fundraiser. If you want to have this conversation, you can go there with me. And on the table in front of us was a form to donate a large dollar amount. She is shaking down her constituents rather than dealing with problems. And as soon as I was unable to deal within the system, I became a whistleblower. And whistleblowers have a hard time. Rarely do they work in their profession again. So this was something that needed to be addressed.
And Ms. Blankenbecker, you have decades of experience working in the healthcare field as a nurse, as an administrator in the military. What specific parts of the Vision 2025 strategic plan for the VA in New Hampshire do you see being implemented as a priority within the next 6 months?
Well, certainly, I think that our veterans having a choice of where they want to go for care should be a priority. You know, as you stated, I cared for our wounded warriors on the battlefield over in Afghanistan, and the care for them doesn't stop. That goes on in perpetuity. These people, you know, we promised them care for life, and we owe them care for life, and so they deserve the best care that we can give. You know, they certainly shouldn't get be treated as second-class citizens and get second-rate care. Now, some people really like to go to the VA, and so we want to keep the VA system going for those folks who like to be treated by folks within the VA system. But we also know as a healthcare provider that outcomes are better for people when they're close to their families. And so if they're close to their families, where those specialists are, where they can get that good quality care in their own community, we need to let them go there. So certainly veteran choice.
Mr. Boulogne.
I have two brothers in Vietnam era veterans, and one of them lives on Hospital Road in Colbert, short walk from the hospital. And when he needs medical care, he has to drive all the way to White River Junction and back. It's a 6-7 hour round trip. And I am not disparaging the hospital in White River Junction. He says he got good care there. But if you just gave all the veterans a card that said they'd get the medical care, then they deserve it. I mean, when you put your life on the line for the country, you deserve the best medical care that the country can give you. Just give them a card, a medical card, where they can go wherever they want. And allow the Veterans Administration hospitals to compete with the other hospitals. I don't want to shut any of them down, but if they're really that good, let them compete with private hospitals. And you know, it would. I'm sure that my brother is not the only one with that type of problem.
Mr. Belanger.
Well, the problem, I mean, I believe that veterans should be able to go to any hospital to get their care so that they can get their issues taken care of. But the problem we have is we have a terrible lobbying system in this country, and our lobbyists are crooks. they make a lot of money, and they turn around and they make it hard for an individual to get health care. They make it hard for a veteran to go get care, even in their own VA, because we have just so many lobbyists in the pockets of our Congress and Senate that it's terrible. We need to fix the lobbying system so we can start getting down to making our hospitals doing things on a fair playing field. And I think once we start working on that, everything else is going to fall in line. And we need to also make sure that people understand, these contractors, that just because you're doing work for the federal government, it doesn't mean that the cost can be astronomical. It needs to be fair.
Mr. Burns.
Government health care has failed. Government fails at delivering health care. I support fully funding Veterans Choice and then leaving the VA to deal with wartime wounds, such like burns, massive head traumas, and bionics like we see Dean Kamen producing here in Manchester. And this would help streamline everything. The VA has absolutely failed. There's a recent study out since we've made some changes at the VA. Infections are up. Customer dissatisfaction is up, and employee dissatisfaction is up. The government cannot handle health care. Full Veterans Choice, they have a card, they can go to any hospital they want, and the VA will continue to localize and treat war-type wounds.
Mr. Negron.
Thank you. And Casey, that's a great question. And it was central to Dr. Levinson's campaign. I think that the thing that I'm trying to wrap my head around is that in looking at Facebook, because that's what we do, Dr. Levinson put out that the very #1 reason to vote for him into Congress is that he took on Washington and won. I don't think anybody's won. You know, if you look at the Secretary of the VA, just in the end of July, we have 400,000 backlogs that's going out there. This fight's not over. And the people that have been fighting it long before Dr. Levinson became a whistleblower were veterans and veterans organizations. And those are the ones that are out there that have started turning this tide. You know, we the ones that are veterans, and we're veterans on this stage, you know, we're the ones on the outside trying to get in. It's not the people on the inside. So we need to take our hats off to all those veterans that are out there trying to make this right. And that's what we should do. You know, the president signed the Mission Act, which is allowing choices for any vet to go to anywhere. Those are the things that we need to do, and I think that's what we need to continue.
Mr. Levinson, you have 30 seconds.
Yes. When Secretary Shulkin got notice of what we were doing as whistleblowers, he came with $30 million in new funding. He removed some bad leadership. Measures in New Hampshire went up. They're still improving. Clearly, a lot more needs to be done. The problem is Ann Custer. She would not help New Hampshire. I went to her saying we have to spend this money wisely, and her response was California is next up for any new building projects. We need a representative that will represent New Hampshire and not California.
Let's move to a lightning round now, as we're just about at the halfway point. These are going to be brief answers, 10 seconds or less, please. We'll start on this side with Mr. Burns. In addition to President Trump, do you think another Republican should run in the 2020 presidential primary?
Well, I wouldn't support any other president, anybody else. I wouldn't support another candidate. I was an early supporter, and I was the only early supporter up here on stage of President Trump. But obviously, anybody has the right, and having anybody in there helps get your voters out and gets them ready for the real general election.
Okay, Ms. Blankenbecker, a little bit more lightning.
Oh, yes, so absolutely no. The president's doing a great job. Look at all the things he's done for the state of New Hampshire. He brought us tax reform. You know, we need to continue that on, and President Trump can continue that on. He has got nations talking together that haven't been talking in forever. His foreign policy is great. No, I wouldn't advocate for that.
Mr. Boulogne.
No.
No, a political outsider has been shown to change the system and change the dialogue. Having President Trump has done this, and that's what we need more of.
Mr. Negron.
I would continue to support President Trump.
Well, I think competition's always good. I mean, I support our president, but I also support competition. I think if we give a little competition, he's going to be right on his game, and he's going to bring out some new issues, and the rest of the country is going to understand. I mean, he believes in we the people, but I also believe competition is a good thing.
Okay, Mr. Belanger, another question now, lightning round, quickly,
Yep.
And we're going to move from you down this way. So all of you are strong Second Amendment supporters. What's your favorite kind of gun to shoot?
What's my favorite type of gun to shoot? I want to say a Glock 33, because I own it.
Mr. Negron.
Anybody else's?
My Beretta over and under with my dog Libby by my side.
Mr. Boulogne.
Pump action 12 gauge Mossberg with an extra large capacity clip.
Well, I won't refer to a email I sent out years ago and say the 50 cal, but I will say Beretta. That was my weapon in Afghanistan.
Mr. Burns.
Shot a pretty nice scar the other day, but I'll go with the classic and say Colt 1911.
Okay, coming this way down the line, which member of the current New Hampshire congressional delegation do you most respect?
Me?
Yeah, Mr. Burns.
Oh, Carol Shea Porter. She's an outsider, and she got elected with almost no money. I mean, she reminds me of me when I run for campaigns. I don't agree with her politically, but I respect her winning the elections that she has.
Ms. Blankenbecker.
Because they have not been effective for the state of New Hampshire, and I really care about the state of New Hampshire, and I certainly care about America, I don't agree with either of them on their votes or their policies, so neither.
Mr. Boulogne.
Carol Shea Porter, she got rid of Frank Ginta. I know you shouldn't speak against Republicans, but Frank Ginta was as crooked as a dog's hind leg. And I address him in my book. I wrote a book, Menace to Society.
So Mr. Boulogne, it's a lightning round, so good answer. Mr. Levinson.
I would have to say Ann Custer. Sitting across the table from her, I couldn't imagine a worse congresswoman.
It was who you most respect.
Well,
okay,
I'll leave it
Mr.
like
Mr.
that.
Negron.
I would be Carol Shea Porter because she quit.
Absolutely none of them, because they have no constituent services within them.
Okay, starting with you, Mr. Belanger. The NFL season started last night. When players kneel during the national anthem, are they engaging their First Amendment rights, or are they disrespecting the flag?
Well, obviously you didn't see my T-shirts that I had, but you know, I believe they're disrespecting the flag. I believe a little bit of respect goes a long way.
Mr. Negron.
Yeah, as a business owner, you know, you have a contract, and the contract says that you will stand for the national anthem. I'd boot them out just because there's a failure to perform.
Mr. Levinson.
They're completely disrespecting the flag, their fans, and the country.
Mr. Boulogne.
They are ungrateful. I mean, only in this country can someone grow up in a poor neighborhood and become super wealthy millionaires doing something that they love to do. And I think they're being disrespectful and ungrateful.
Ms. Blankenbecker.
I've worn a uniform for 32 years to protect and defend everybody's constitutional rights to everything, and that includes your First Amendment right. While I find what they do disgusting, and I would never do it myself, I don't watch professional football for that very reason, and I walked out of a roller derby thing the other day when they kneeled for the national anthem. But I have protected folks' constitutional rights.
Mr. Burns.
I absolutely respect the First Amendment, and they have every right, but the NFL also has every right to fire them, as they should, because it's obviously hurting their profits.
Okay, last lightning round question, starting with Mr. Burns, working down the line. This one has a little libertarian flavor to it. If you're stopped at an immigration checkpoint here in New Hampshire, would you voluntarily show your ID?
Absolutely not.
Ms. Blankenbecker.
Yes, I have nothing to hide.
Mr. Blount.
I have no problem showing my ID.
I was stopped. They were very respectful. They were doing their job, and they were doing it without the support of Ann Custer and many others in Congress.
Mr. Negron.
I'd give them 2.
Yes, of course I would.
Our next question comes from John DeStaso, and it is on President Trump's foreign policy.
Yes, thanks, Adam. In July, President Trump in Helsinki stood next to Vladimir Putin and told the world that he tended not to believe that Russia interfered in the 2016 presidential election, despite the assessment of numerous nonpartisan government intelligence agencies. Why is that? Because Trump said, quote, that Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial, close quote. The president later walked back the comment, but after being hit with widespread criticism. So, Mr. Negron, as a supporter of President Trump, what did you think of his conduct next to Putin? And secondly, do you believe that Russia interfered in our 2016 election?
Well, thank you for the question, John. You know, we sometimes tend to forget that President Putin is a former KGB operative. I mean, he's a former hardliner. And for those of us that were in an active duty in the early 80s and protecting this country from the Soviet Union like I did, we understand the mindset of those people. So I believe what the president was doing, in my opinion, and then he did walk back the comment, which you so eloquently stated, was that I think he's playing a 3D chess game with Putin. He has to. We understand where he's at. And, you know, being as a person that used intel data, you know, it's the best intelligence gathering entities in the world. So I believe the president knew what he was doing. And what was the second part, John?
Well, do you believe that Russia did interfere in the 2016 election?
I will tell you that I don't think a single vote was changed, but I do believe that they had some ability to put out in social media some things that would make people decide. But I will tell people, you need to decide on your own, make your own decisions, and not be swayed by stuff you see on social media.
Mr. Boulogne.
I believe that they're putting up websites. I mean, that's already been proven. They're trying to disrupt the elections. But as long as they're not stealing votes and hacking voting machines, which I want to get rid of the voting machines. Go on YouTube, and you'll see kids hacking every single electronic voting machine that's available. So I want to get rid of those and just go back to the paper ballot, which can't be hacked and has a good record. You can recount it. But yeah, I believe they're trying to influence the elections.
Ms. Blankenbecker.
Thank you. I believe our president, when he was speaking with Putin, was being a diplomat, and I think that we have to use our words. Having served in the military for a long time and caring for our wounded warriors, I never want to go back to war with anybody. If I never have to care for a warrior again, it would not hurt my feelings. But and that's why I think it's so important that our president is diplomatic and that he does talk with all the world leaders. And so the fact that he was up there even speaking with him, I think was laudable for sure. As far as the investigations, we need to let investigations do what investigations do, but I do not believe that there was any Russian collusion into the elections.
Mr. Levinson.
Yes, I mean, if the president would have been adversarial at that meeting, perhaps he went a little bit too far trying to be conciliatory. But if he had been adversarial, he wouldn't have accomplished any goals of that meeting, and that would have set foreign policy backward. And as far as Russia trying to influence elections, it's been clear they've been involved in hacking, they've been involved in ransomware. Something has to be done. I believe the president has been forwarding the aims of cyber warfare defense, and that this is something that will move forward as the administration goes forward. There have been published reports of this, and that we will see better results, but the president had to act in some sort of conciliatory manner or the trip would have been a waste.
Mr. Burns.
Yeah, absolutely. Our president's a master negotiator. What is he supposed to say to Putin when he denies it? Call him liar, liar, pants on fire? I mean, that's just ridiculous. And for the liberal media to be out there, just hoping and praying for this sort of like nuclear war or another Cold War is just absolutely unfathomable and totally ridiculous. And the other ridiculous premise is that 16 Russians and a few $1,000s in Facebook ads actually changed the election. I don't know whether it changed one vote or two votes, or maybe it even changed a few the other way. They want us fighting each other, and that's what they're getting right now, is that Americans are at each other's throats over this boogeyman of Russians on the internet. It's changed all of us this election cycle on the way that we can advertise. It's much more difficult now to get our message out using Facebook and Google and Twitter, because now we have to be confirmed over and over again, send them our license, our passport, etc. And then we've allowed now the Russians to win by overreacting the way that we have.
Mr. Belanger.
Being a businessman, sometimes you gotta keep your friends close and your enemies closer. And Mr. Trump is a very smart businessman. By being there and creating havoc while he's with them, it's the same thing. He did a strategic thing. He he keeps them right where he wants them. He's got a plan. He's got a plan for Russia. He knows how he's going to handle it, and he needs support. But he needs support from the people. And the people's voice have to support our president and our administration. It isn't all about one person going to support the administration. It's about getting the people to support them. And that's what happened during the election. There was no hacking. People of the United States supported our president.
Next question from Dave Solomon. It's on pharmaceutical prices.
Yes, turning to healthcare costs. As we know, Medicare is one of the largest purchasers of prescription drugs in the world, yet does not negotiate with the pharmaceutical companies on price. So, Ms. Blankenbecker, do you think Medicare Part D should be amended to allow the federal government to negotiate directly with drug manufacturers? And if so, how would you promote a policy like that in Congress? And if not, why not?
So thank you. And, first of all, I don't believe government should be in the business of health care. So let me say that right out front. And I don't know how you can send somebody to Congress who doesn't have any health care background and expect us to get health care solutions. But to get to your question, we need transparency, of course. We need, that's the best way to drive down the cost of healthcare. And we need transparency in pricing. You wouldn't go to buy a truck and just walk into the first dealership you went to and pick that truck and pay whatever price they ask, right? You're going to comparatively shop and you're going to shop around. And so we do need transparency in pricing. And the only way to get that is to get the government to be able to see, those pricing tables. So yes, I believe in transparency in medicine. I think that's one of the ways we can drive down healthcare healthcare costs here in the nation. And certainly with big pharma. When you look at who are the richest companies in this nation, we're talking about companies that who's at the top of the Fortune 500, your McKessons, all your big pharma. So.
Mr. Levinson.
It's a national tragedy that we're unable to negotiate drug prices with Medicare. It's one of the largest increases in cost. The NIH produces a lot of the grants that go for the development of these drugs, and yet the people whose taxpayer dollars went for developing those drugs can no longer afford those drugs. We should be able to negotiate drug prices interstate and even internationally. The drug prices are much lower across the world than they are in the United States because the drug companies have special interests, they have their lobbyists here, and that's got to change.
Mr. Burns.
So a little bit of the story here, and quite frankly, what I do for business is make your drugs safer and cheaper. I work in quality control and automation of pharmaceuticals, so I work with all these pharmaceutical companies. And two things. Number one, when we talk about the VA, the government is involved in healthcare. So it's interesting always when someone says that the government shouldn't be involved in healthcare, and they do a terrible job at it. I'm always saying that. But actually, the VA is now producing some of its own pharmaceuticals. I've been contacted about equipment from them. And as far as, all these drug companies doing well, yes, there's many drug companies that are doing quite well, but I just talked to a guy yesterday, and he and 50 other people are being laid off in New Jersey. It's unfortunate that we don't negotiate. We absolutely should be able to negotiate. But what we are is this is the largest socialized healthcare plan in the world where we pay for the rest of the world's drugs. And it is absolutely unfair, and we need to do more about it. But we also need to make incentives to keep these pharmaceutical companies producing here, either from a national security level or the jobs that we need in a place like Puerto Rico that's been devastated after the hurricane and has lost 20, 30 pharmaceutical production plants that they used to have 20, 30 years ago.
Mr. Boulogne.
I wrote a book called Menace to Society, and in there's a chapter about my dog, Kenny Boy. And we were out walking one day, and he got into a raccoon. And it was getting ugly, so I jumped in to break it up. He didn't get bit, but I did. I got bit by the raccoon. So I go, we didn't catch the raccoon, so we couldn't test it for rabies. So, I had to go get rabies shots. $8,000 for 4 shots. $8,000. And I'm sitting there, and the insurance company paid for it. And so it didn't cost me anything, just a $5 copay. So I sent a letter to the insurance company. I said, well, you guys are being hosed. I mean, you can't, it's not $8,000 for 4 rabies shots a week apart. They paid it, and they never got back to me. And there's something wrong. If you induce competition, these things, I wouldn't see maybe $500, $1,000, and somebody's making a profit there somewhere. Competition is always better. We need to push competition, encourage competition as much as we possibly can.
Mr. Belanger.
Well, I absolutely believe in competition, and I believe that we need to repeal the law that we can't negotiate with pharmaceutical companies. But let me tell you something. Our problem is the bureaucrats in Washington. If you've been in Washington for over a decade and nothing's improved, you can't say, well, geez, we should just send one person who knows about health care, because nobody up here knows what they're doing about health care. I mean, doctors are there, and doctors that help writing these books that the government's putting out to help change the healthcare laws, and they're not even doing the right job. So obviously, we need to open up the we need to open up the book. We need to get we the people involved. Some of the we the people that are in our country that can't be involved because they don't think they can be trusted, those are the people we need to trust. We need to find people that can help solve this problem. And it's not just one person because they have experience up here. Well, their experience over a decade hasn't done any good so far. I mean, I haven't seen anything change.
Time's
so
up.
we need to change it by the people.
Mr. Negron.
Yeah, thank you. And Dave, that's a great question. I mean, that's one of the largest risks that we have to this country. It's a national issue for me, a national security issue. So I absolutely believe you should open up Part D and start being able to negotiate with the pharmaceuticals. You have to. There's a bunch of different inroads out there that why our healthcare is so expensive, and that's one of the primary ones. I hear people when I talk to them and knock on doors that they will go out of country to go get the same prescription and then bring it back into the country. It's crazy. It shouldn't happen that way. So we need to look at these big pharmaceutical companies that I tell people that I remember growing up that the guy who had the nicest car was the doctor. Now the guy who has the nicest car is the administrator and is the guy that's going around selling the pharmaceuticals. So absolutely we need to open it up and be able to negotiate on behalf of the American people.
Our next question is on abortion, and it comes from Casey McDermott.
So the debate over abortion has again resurfaced now that Justice Anthony Kennedy has retired and the Senate is undergoing confirmation hearings for his replacement. Mr. Burns, if Roe versus Wade is indeed overturned and opens the door for Congress to enact new abortion legislation, what would you vote for? And would you support an absolute ban, any exceptions? And if you could all keep your answers to 30 seconds or less, please.
Well, I'm 100% pro-life from conception, and I'm 100% pro-life even against state-sanctioned murder. I would support that. I think that if we saw an overturn first, we would probably see it down at the state level. But I definitely would support legislation pro-life. The only exception would be a heartbeat for a heartbeat. Life of the mother. I don't think that anybody can truly make that decision. I think that there has to be a panel though involved. It can't just be arbitrary. But other than that, 100%.
Mr. Levinson.
Yes. The Supreme Court nominee said he would not overturn Roe v. Wade. New Hampshire, a state legislature that this session passed transgender rights. I can't see them limiting abortion rights. I myself am strongly against third trimester abortion. I'm against public funding, yet I feel the Supreme Court has spoken when it comes to early first trimester.
Mr. Negron.
Absolutely not. And if you're going to run a conservative ticket, there is no off-ramps. Either you believe in life completely or you don't. To be able to say that abortion in the first 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks is okay, but late term is not, doesn't cut it in my book at all. Either you're pro-life or you're not. No exceptions.
Ms. Blankenbecker.
Thank you. And I, too, am a pro-life candidate. I'm the only candidate on the stage here today that's been endorsed by the Susan B. Anthony list, which is a pro-life organization. And I feel very strongly about protecting our unborn. Certainly if it were overturned, of course, the Supreme Court doesn't get the cases that come to them, but once they get them, they determine the constitutional question and if they can hear the case. And so, that's a very big hypothetical that case would even come. It has to be brought to the Supreme Court first. So we would deal with it then, but I'm pro-life, and I would vote on side of the unborn.
Mr. Beloin.
I'm pro-life. I always want to side on life versus death, the culture of life versus the culture of death, and I'm consistent. I'm also against the death penalty. I find it a bit offensive that Ann Custer finds it okay to terminate an unborn child who has done nothing wrong, nothing illegal, but then wants to allow a criminal who has killed to get a second chance. I'm all for giving the criminal who's a killer a second chance at life.
Mr. Beloin. That's time.
Right.
Mr. Belanger.
I'm pro-life, but I kind of take to heartbeat for heartbeat. If the woman's in trouble and they have to terminate the pregnancy, yes, I believe that. That's about the only time I would ever say to side. But I would have to say that nobody can make that decision but the female and her husband as a family unit.
45-second closing statements, starting with Mr. Levinson.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for coming out tonight and listening. I'm running to restore accountability to government. When I blew the whistle on corruption at the VA, I risked it all. That's what leaders do. Now I'm asking for your vote to blow the whistle on Washington, to end illegal immigration, to defend our constitutional rights, and to deliver for our veterans. We don't need any more career politicians. We need a conservative outsider who will work with the president to drain the swamp. I'm a doctor. I'm not a politician. I will be an advocate for the people of the 2nd Congressional District the way I've been an advocate for patients. So please come out and vote Tuesday, and I hope I can earn your support. Please
Mr. Burns.
vote for me.
I was an early supporter of Donald Trump. It was an amazing experience working for him and all the really awesome things, spending time with his family and just the great opportunities that he opened up. I'm going to make the sales pitch on beating Custer. I think the most important thing is somebody being able to beat Custer, and what we have is a lot of apathy right now. And we need to go out there and we need to activate the deplorables. There's tens of thousands of brand new voters that came out and voted for Donald Trump for the first time. Many of them just marked Donald Trump's name. But they need candidates that they can get behind, that they know that they can put supporters of Donald Trump in Congress that aren't just there because it was convenient, but was there from the early beginnings.
Ms. Blankenbecker.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Thank you to the panel. Certainly thank you to my supporters, to my team, and to my family. I really appreciate it. You know, I'm the only person on this stage who can beat Ann Custer. I've been proven in a tough district in Concord back in 2009 and again in 2010. I love America. I love New Hampshire, and I want to continue to serve our nation in that way. I'm Lynn Blankenbecker. I'm mission ready. I'm combat proven, and I would be honored to earn your vote. I promise I will not let you down. God bless.
Mr. Boulogne.
I was in the waiting room at the Student Center, and there was a picture hanging there, a quote from St. Benedict. It said, "First in deeds, not words." And out of all the candidates up here, I'm the only one who's actually achieved the saving of taxpayer dollars in the form of billions. If you read my book, Menace to Society, I hope we can plug it a little bit. It's available on my website. You will see letters from taxpayer watchdogs across the country: California, Indiana, New Jersey, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, Ohio, all giving me credit for helping them save the taxpayers billions in education funding money. Billions. I've done it.
Mr. Negron.
Thank you, and thank you to St. Anselm's IOP for allowing us here in WMUR and NHPR, so thank you very much. Look, when we started this campaign back in October, we came out with a message. We're the only one out here with a message since October. And it's about fighting for New Hampshire families and freedoms. That's what it's about. It's about restoring American confidence. You know, we've knocked on over 25,000 doors, called people more than anybody else on this stage. We hear that there's a lot of unrest about insecurities, about national security, about the opioid issue, about immigration. It's those things that we hear. We know we've got the ground game. We know that we're out there and we're knocking on these doors. We're hearing these people. And as I tell the people, you know, Ann Custer is going to look at that little side view mirror and says that objects in the mirror closer than they appear. That's this campaign. Thank you very much and God bless.
Mr. Belanger.
You know, at the end of the day, it all boils down to not only thinking about going to Washington and thinking about the administration and thinking about the president. We have to think about the people that we represent. We have to think about taking their voice to Washington and what they believe in. You know, we need to just start thinking about people and how we got here as a nation. Thank you very much. I'm Brian Belanger. Go to my website, and please, I hope to earn your support on Tuesday.
We thank the candidates. A reminder for any undeclared voters still out there making up their minds: you can vote in next week's primary. When you arrive at the polls, let them know which party's ballot you want. After voting on Tuesday, you'll be automatically registered to that party unless you fill out a card or sign a list to remain undeclared. Well, that wraps up our Granite State debates for this week, leading up to the primary election on Tuesday, September 11th. For complete coverage, stay with us here on WMUR News 9. You can always check out our website, WMUR.com, or our mobile app. We thank the NHIOP, we thank this wonderful audience, and we, of course, thank the viewers for watching. Thank you for enjoying the Granite State debates. Have a great night.